It does, absolutely. And I think it does have a big impact. There's so many parallels in life, so many parallels from running and how you deal with life and how you process it. And I feel really lucky to have found my thing. And I would encourage everybody, find your thing, find what you're really passionate about, because it will spark you. It gives me such joy. Even this morning, I was out there at 6:30 this morning. It was freezing cold, but it gives me such joy to move my body and meet my friends and, have a coffee with them after the run. And it's not just about the running. It's about much, much more.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have an author on this show today. If you think that running around in circles is a waste of time, this author is going to help you to come up with a different perspective on running in circles. She's on here to talk about running marathons and all the amazing things that she does. I'm excited to have her here on the podcast, joining me from far, far away in a different time zone and a different climate right now based on the time of year. So happy to have Gillian on the podcast. Gillian, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And yes, I am on the far south coast, for those who know, far south coast of New South Wales. So it's pretty chilly here this morning. We were literally training this morning with ice on the oval. But hey, that's the way to start the day, isn't it?
Gillian, you have been running a lot. And your book talks about running in circles. I'm excited to have you on. I used to do running and stuff back in school. You're at a different level completely to whatever I've ever done. How many marathons to date, as the time of recording, Gillian, have you run so far?
Well, for those who are listening to audio and can't see me, I am aged 64 and I have done 13 marathons in the last 15 years. So I started running later in life when I was 47. And I've pretty much tried to do a marathon every year since then. Obviously, COVID didn't assist that goal. But yes, and I'm currently on track for number 14. I'm currently going to do an iconic run here in Australia, the September Sydney Marathon 2024. And I'm currently training for that one, which starts, you run across the iconic Harbour Bridge and you finish at the iconic Sydney Opera House. So
beautiful.
It's not difficult to get up before the sun and train for that when I've got such an iconic run to do in September.
Beautiful. Now, you have not only run in your home country, you've run around the world as well. Where have you run to?
Yay, that's a great question. My first marathon that I ran with my now best mate, one of my best mates, Helen, was in Paris. We ran the streets of Paris and did the Paris Marathon in 2009. And that was going to be our one and only marathon, which is why we went to Paris. And then from then on in, I have done pretty much, I've done New York twice, and I've done Boston twice. And that's for reasons we'll discuss later. I've done Chicago, Berlin, London, Melbourne, Canberra, our capital city. So yeah, I've literally run all over the world trying to get, and I did get the Abbott World Major Marathon medal. So there's 6 at the moment runs that are registered in that series, and you have to do all 6 and complete them. And hopefully Sydney is applying to be the 7th World Major, and that's why I'm doing that in September with the view that it will become a World Major and I will get my 7th star. So yes, great goals.
Wow. Okay, so you said it started in Paris with one marathon and that's it, we're good.
Yes.
And what keeps bringing you back to do the next one then?
That's a great question. I think many women will relate. I was in my late 40s. I'd moved to Australia a few years previous to that from the UK. And I felt like I'd lost a little bit of me. I'd been very busy, in leadership roles, running a company, setting the family up. My husband and I were trying to make sure our teenagers were happy living in Australia and, school mum, picking up, dropping off, doing all of that teenage stuff. And I woke up sort of one morning, it was 7 years later and went, I just need something for me. And I found that in running. I carved out the time and I really enjoy having those targets and goals to work for. when you're a little bit of a workaholic, you sort of need the balance. And it sounds weird that a marathon gives me balance, but it does. It means that I have a set training program. I pop it in my diary. It has to be done. So you have to fit it in around the drop-off. So you have to fit it in around work or travel. And for me, it gives me that discipline to look after my physical and mental health. Otherwise, that would probably slip into a little corner when life takes over. So having big, audacious goals like, oh my goodness, we've just paid $5,000 to fly to New York means I have to do the training. I can't use an excuse of maybe next year. And that's why I'd never really done Sydney before, because it was my hometown. I lived in Sydney for 20 years. I went, oh, I don't need to run Sydney. I didn't have the motivation. And now I don't live in Sydney. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to Sydney and run again and run that beautiful bridge and be part of that amazing, hopefully history-making marathon this year.
Talk a little bit about the running community. What kind of people have you met as you've traveled the world? There's got to be some amazing people that you cross paths with as you run.
Yes. And that's the reason I keep running is the community. I've met the most amazing, particularly men and women, but particularly women community who give you this huge sense of belonging. And I think it's very true that you need to find a tribe. The tribe and the community is really important. And when I started running, I met this amazing group of runners in Sydney, and we're still, 15 years on, we're still in contact, we're still friends. I live on the far south coast because of one of those runners, Helen, who was in that running group. We ended up, living down here, and now I've met a new running community. And you talk about the people you meet when you travel, but actually we travel together. So Helen and her husband David and my husband Chad, we've traveled to New York together. We've traveled to these places, and so we've met great runners there. But actually, we tend to move as a tribe. And Sydney, we've got a load of runners going from the south coast up to Sydney. So it's given me that real sense of belonging in a country where I don't have any other family, extended family, because they're all in the UK. So it's given me a family outside of, our close-knit family. So it's been a very, very cathartic journey as well as a running journey.
Apart from the physical benefits of running, how else are you personally developing or growing because of being a runner?
I think I've developed because of the challenges I've had in my running. They've shown me that when life, comes along and knocks you down, which it does for all of us, it's given me an understanding of I can push through or a way forward. It's definitely running marathons. I've developed a resilience I didn't know I had, a determination in work and professional life that I didn't know I had, but also a real sense of calmness. So I can go out for an hour, 2-hour run and process stuff. For me, it's a real sense of calming and allowing me time to work through things that may be going on at home or at work. So mentally, it's been a real stabilizer for me. And also when you're running with such beautiful women, and I do tend to run more with women because I'm slow and can't keep up with the guys. It's like free counseling. If you've got an issue and it's, you can chat about it and there's no judgment. People give you their advice. You go, oh, that's an interesting perspective. So it's like free counseling. And what goes on a run stays on a run. So the code is, don't discuss it outside. And so that too, it's really helped my mental health as well as my physical health.
Good. Yeah, there's a lot of different benefits, obviously, to doing something in community, but also it's a physical aspect of getting out and getting out of the house and having something to work towards. I like that. That's great.
Yeah, I have this commitment, and I talk about it in my book, that when I start training for an event, at the moment, like with Sydney Marathon, I'm doing a sort of 16-week training program, and I sit down just before that program starts and I put everything into my phone, every run, everything I've got to do. And then I make a commitment to myself that I never delete a training. So if I've got to miss one because of a work commitment, I will move it in my week, but I won't delete it. So, it does mean sometimes, and I was certainly busy, when I was a CEO of several companies, it did mean that I'd have to do a morning and an evening run, because if work gets busy and you can't fit it in, then, the next day you've got to double up. But I made that commitment to myself that you never delete it, you just move it. And it's worked for me. It's given me a really good sense of discipline.
How has your family supported you in all of the travels and all of the training? Talk about that.
My family's been amazing. They roll their eyes when they go, oh, mum's doing another one. Or my husband is my greatest supporter. And he's who I've dedicated my book to. He's been at every run and stood on the corner. And I think it's as hard to be a supporter at a marathon as it is for anybody out there. Be nice to your supporters, because they stand there for hours just waiting for you to whiz by. Well, not whiz by, but slowly, pace by. And they stand there and, they carry all the bags and they go through all the trauma that you go through the night before when you're nervous. And so my husband's been my biggest supporter. But I think the biggest spin-off and I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that I didn't know my children, who were sort of teenagers as I started running, were watching. And that, as a mum, you're role modeling behavior without knowing it. And so much so that when I ran New York in 2017, both of my children ran it with me. So that was for me an absolute joy that my daughter got us the places and we ran for charity, and she ran, and my son then said, well, if you two are doing it, I'll do it. So it was a real family affair. So my husband was there on the sidelines in Central Park and my two kids were running a marathon. And I think that for me, the fact that I've given them that, and they may, my son talks about it in the book, he'll probably never do a marathon again. I think he will. But the fact is he's done it and he knows what it feels like. And they both worked very hard towards that goal. And you don't realize that what you're doing is having that ripple effect. And I should have called the book The Ripple Effect, because there's been so many amazing ripple effects of running for me within my family. And so they're very, very supportive. Recently we've just been through some, pretty tough medical issues here around our place. And we came back from the hospital just a couple of weeks ago. And my son said, what do you want to do, Mum? Should we, I said, I'm just going for a run. He's like, oh, yeah, right.
Of course you are, yes.
Of course you are. And they roll their eyes, but they know that that's my place. That's what I do. So, yeah, they're amazing.
Right. So the book is Running in Circles, Chasing Dreams, and Dodging Hot Flashes.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting title for a book. Where did the idea of writing the book come from?
The idea of writing the book came, for many years I kept saying as I was running, I should write about this. And then somebody challenged me, as they always do, and said, look, you've been talking about writing it for 10 years. You should write it. I went, oh, yeah. And then I realized that in talking to, I get very, very excited and passionate about running and what it's done for me. And definitely through menopause. I don't know what I would have been like because I was running through menopause. But, I know many women who, struggle with menopause, and it's now okay to talk about it, which it sort of wasn't 10 years ago. And so I really wanted to inspire other women to move more in menopause. And so it wasn't just about, getting my story down, but I did want to have it documented. I wanted to have it to stand for something. But I wanted to inspire other women to move more in menopause. And that's what the book is doing now. Without a doubt, everybody who reads it sends me a little testimonial. Thank you. I went and did my first park run. I've just put my shoes on, or I've started to play pickleball. It doesn't matter what it is. Yes, the book's about running, but if it inspires women to move more and take up something that is physically, it needs to be something, like a pickleball is the biggest thing, but something you love to do. It may not be running. It might be dancing. It doesn't matter. But I do know that the reason I wrote the book was to inspire other women, and it's doing that. So I'm very excited about that because it's transforming other women's lives, and running has definitely transformed my life. It's given me an identity I never knew I would have.
What is the impact of inactivity for women going through menopause? Like just not being active and not being healthy and getting out there and moving their bodies and being active, like what does inactivity do during the menopause process?
Yeah, I'd love to answer that. I'm no menopause expert, but I see I don't know because I moved through menopause, but I do see as I talk to other women, it brings your mental health down. I think you begin to lose this sense of identity, you become sluggish, you don't sleep well, you drink more. And I've seen women's lives change when they do take up a physical activity, that they sleep better. That's a massive thing these days. They sleep a little bit better. They eat a little bit better. They maybe don't have as much alcohol. And suddenly all these little effects, and it's inch by inch, that these things take effect. And I always talk about in the book, how do you eat an elephant? That's been a mantra of mine for 20 years. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you get healthy? It's one thing at a time. If it's one less drink because I'm getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning to go and play pickleball or play badminton or whatever it is, though everything you do towards a better life is incremental. Yeah. And I just think now there is a great wave of women particularly trying to take an active role in menopause. And it's not easy, and obviously some women need medication and all sorts of things. But I do know 100% that moving more, even if it's walking every day. I've got a lady in our village, and she walks 100 Ks a week.
Wow.
Now, she's in her 60s. She might even be in her 70s. But that's been her way and her passion. She loves to walk. She gets out there twice a day and moves her body. And there's a group of ocean swimmers down here. I live in a beautiful part of the world, and these women, I totally admire them, and they're in the ocean every day. They're in the ocean today, and it's like 12 degrees, and they're in their 70s, their 60s and 70s, but they're moving more. They're getting a real sense of longevity and living life to the full. And I think, unfortunately, many people don't see that, and until you get a taste of it. I remember quickly a story about Heather, who used to say to me, "It's all right for you." And she was quite overweight, and she ended up doing a challenge climbing Kilimanjaro. She'd never done anything like that in her life. In her late 40s, she climbed Kilimanjaro. And yes, it sounds extreme, but it absolutely changed her life of moving more, having to get fit, and she's never looked back. And I think the minute you can make that change, whether it's one small change, and put some shoes on and go for a walk every day for 30 minutes, you will, within a week, notice a difference.
Yeah, the active moving, I think. And you mentioned the mental aspects as well. I think it's a great thing just to have your own time to think through thoughts and, things happen at home, things happen with family, and you need to process that. And I think we don't take enough time for ourselves, I think, overall.
I agree. I mean, my staff used to hate it. I'd often go out for a run at lunchtime, and in some of the roles I was in sort of, sales and marketing companies, and I'd come back from a run and I'd walk into the office and go, "I've just had this amazing idea." And they go, "Oh." And my husband dreads it sometime. I mean, I've been out for a run and come back and said, "I think it's time to move. Let's sell the house." He's like, But it's like, for me, it's my meditation. I can't sit still. I'm not very good at that. But for me, it's a moving meditation. It does allow me to process things and work out how I'm going to deal with life.
So the readers purchase your book, Gillian. They have their book in their hands. They're going to read it for the first time. You're going to open this and read the first word. Before they do that, what do you want to say to them? What do you want them to know about this book?
I want them to know that it will inspire them. It will change. It will change the way they look at movement. But I also want them to understand that just take the word running out and put any word in. It doesn't matter what it is. Yes, it's about running. But if running is not your thing, and so many people say, running is not my thing. I used to run. I've got bad knees. And that's I totally get all of that. But find something you're passionate about. And as you're reading the book, just think, what could I be passionate about? It might be table tennis. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just reading.
Yeah, excellent. You did mention earlier in the conversation that you've also run in Boston. And when we met together to talk about the podcast, you shared some pretty interesting stories, very difficult stories when you were running in the Boston Marathon. There's people that listen to the show. They live in Boston.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to hear your perspective on the Boston Marathon, what happened for you as a participant, because I think that's a story that changed a lot of things in our world. And you were there. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's an absolute privilege to share it. And it was a privilege it was an experience that did change me, that changed my life. Was we were running, Helen and I were running Boston Marathon in 2013 when the bomb went off. We were what is known as back of the pack runners. So we started quite late in the day. and hence we were 700 meters from the finish line when the bomb went off. Luckily, we weren't fast runners, so we weren't at the finish line, as this could be a very different story. So we were unable to finish the race. It was very traumatic for everybody on that day. Our husbands were due to be at the finish line, and when we found out there was a bomb, we were more concerned for them than for ourselves, because we couldn't get hold of them. As you know, in the middle of a disaster, mobile connections. And however, they were fine due to traffic conditions. They'd not made it to the finish line. So we were very, very lucky. Others weren't so lucky. And it just shows you there's a much bigger thing going on. So at this point, we realized the race had been stopped. We didn't know why. It took a while for communications. And then eventually we realized we weren't going to finish the race, that we had to turn around and walk away from the finish line. And that's anybody that's we'd worked for 9 months for this goal, invested both time and money heavily into this. But in that one moment, it doesn't become about you, it becomes about the city. And we walked away from that. We turned around and we had to walk away and try and find our husbands and get out of Boston. And the next few days were very traumatic with anybody who remembers they couldn't find the terrorists who made.
Yes.
But Boston, I mean, I don't think anybody could ever prepare for an event like that. And I've certainly been involved in crisis management. But these event organizers were amazing. What they did in those hours, minutes, days afterwards, they were so respectful. They were so amazing to the runners. They even, I sound silly, but they even sent us the Boston Marathon because we couldn't get to the finish line. A lot of people, you just had to leave your bags because there were thousands. It was disruption. Nobody cared, but they did care. They sent us the medal in the post, and neither Helen or I could wear it or even talk about it because we're like, but no, we didn't finish. And it didn't feel right. And in that moment when we walked away, what I'm trying to say to people is the book may change your life. It changed mine in that when I walked away from that situation, as we walked back down the road to try and get out of there, I turned to Helen and I said, I need to quit my job. And she's like, oh. And in that moment, I realized I was able to walk away from the finish line of the marathon. And I was in a toxic situation at work that I couldn't change. I'd been trying to change it for 2 years and I couldn't. And I realized in that moment that I had to walk away from the job. So I came back and I resigned, and we sold our house and we moved, and many, many things came as a result of that experience. But then we were invited, as I say, Bostonians dealt with it so brilliantly. And the organizers then invited everybody who'd been unable to finish to come back the next year. Now, most people think we were crazy, but we were like, well, we've got to finish what we started. So we went back in 2014. And as we were flying into Boston, one of the most memorable moments of my life was this guy next to me on the plane. He was from Boston. He said to me, oh, and what are you doing? Are you here on holiday? I said, no, I'm coming in to run the marathon. And I told him the story, and he just burst into tears. And he just said, I can't believe the runners are coming back. I can't believe you'd come back and help our city get over this. And I'm like, I can't believe you didn't think we would. Of course we would. And it was the most humbling experience of my life to be there that week, to recognize and honor the people, not only that had lost their lives, because actually the death toll was quite small, but the impact was large. I think it was over 200 or 300 people were maimed and from that. And certainly that year, being part of that city and watching them deal with this was the most incredible moment. Very humbling.
What a big reset button for you personally, too. Like you talk about walking away from the race, but also walking away from your job and how that just kind of changed everything for you.
Yeah, sometimes
running has a big impact on you.
It does, absolutely. And I think it does have a big impact. There's so many parallels in life, so many parallels from running and how you deal with life and how you process it. And I feel really lucky to have found my thing. And I would encourage everybody, find your thing, find what you're really passionate about, because it will spark you. It gives me such joy. Even this morning, I was out there at 6:30 this morning. It was freezing cold. It gives me such joy to move my body and meet my friends and, have a coffee with them after the run. And it's not just about the running. It's about much, much more.
Who inspires you, Gillian? I'm really curious to find out who's your inspiration when you need that. You're having one of those days where you don't feel inspired to do the thing, you don't feel inspired to run or any of that. Who inspires you?
Other women, just around me. I think you need to surround yourself with like-minded people. And when you're down, there's always somebody around you who will pick you up. So you don't need to look for the icons. I don't look for hero worships or icons. I'll just I look to my local communities of the girls that I hang out with, and there's always somebody that goes, oh, that we have a great friend here, Ren, who works. She's a teacher, and she makes us run at ridiculous times of the day, which, I've just recently stepped back from full-time work and I should be sleeping in now. But no, because of her, she inspires me to get up before the sun comes up and go out in the cold. I'm getting up earlier than I ever did because that makes me do something. It means she gets to exercise. So my inspiration just comes from, I say just, but it comes from all the women I hang out with.
When you're writing the book, there's a process that you go through as an author. There's some hurdles. It's a marathon to write a book. There you go. How's that? It's a marathon to write a book. You're learning stuff about yourself in the process. What did you learn from the time you started writing to the time you held the book in your hands for the first time? How did you change in the process?
That's a great question. Something I've never been asked before. It took me a long time to write it. I never saw myself as an author, same as I never saw myself as a marathon runner. And so I went, well, if I can run a marathon, I can perhaps write a book. I didn't have any confidence in my own ability to write. I'm not a great writer. I had never done anything like this before. A bit like the marathon, I just decided to do it. And when I decide to do something, I just get on with it. It'll never be perfect. It's by no means perfect. It's not a literary genius. But what I did learn is that you just have to start. So I, again, surrounded myself. I managed to find somebody to coach me in the book mapping process. And I realized in that, she identified that, the only reason I was holding back was I was feeling vulnerable. I didn't know if people really would want to read it. And I felt a little bit self-centered of writing this down. And then she said, get over yourself. Why are you writing this? And one thing she did, she just helped me design, I suppose, an avatar, a person who was going to read it. And I had that central to the whole time I was writing it, was this one person, Anna. In my head, she was called Anna, of who I was writing the book for. And I just had to get over being perfect. If I'd wanted it, if it was going to be perfect, it would never be published. So perfection was, not going to, I had to push that away and also push away what anybody else might think. I was worried about what will other people think when they read it. Well, it's not, maybe the sentences aren't strung together enough. Maybe this, maybe that. And in the end, I just had to decide that this was not about anybody else. This was about me putting my story down and inspiring other women. And they weren't going to be inspired by it being grammatically amazing or a literary genius and long words. So I, in my own way, had to decide it would just be as good as it could be. And that was difficult to put down, that perfection. And I think in writing the book, as I say, I never saw myself as a writer. And if there's writers out there, nobody ever sees, I don't think many see themselves as a writer, but just start. And I treated it that, I talked earlier about my marathon training, about putting it in my diary. I did exactly the same with the book. I gave myself a goal, a time. I went through what I was going to do. I mapped out. When I was writing it, my husband and I were lucky enough to take a couple of months off work, and we were traveling. And I literally spent an hour every day, and wherever we were, might be in a railway station, an airport, wherever we were, every day I disciplined myself that I was going to write an hour. And I had an accountability coach, which is what I need in training and in the book. Every week I was sending stuff through to Anna. And she would edit it and send it back. So I knew I had a Thursday night deadline to get that to her. And that was incredible for me. It just held me. And I do believe everybody needs an accountability coach, whether it's your partner, your child, somebody who's going to hold you to what you say you're going to do. And that really helped me get it done.
That's great advice. Very good advice. Anything else for an author that's writing that you could think of that we can share to encourage them on their journey? Get out there, start writing, do the thing, have a plan. Anything else that could inspire an author?
Yeah, and I think we so often take it. I think it's not about you. It's who is this going to inspire? What is this for? What is the purpose of the book? And if it's, if it's just to for me, originally it started if I just wanted to have it documented, a sort of memoir, but it became much bigger than that. And then I found that, my purpose of writing it for other women to inspire them is just stick to the reason, the core of why are you doing it? Is it a business card, which is a great reason to write a book? It does help you get onto podcasts. It does help you become MCs and go to conferences. It depends what you're writing it for. But I think selfishly, you've got to decide on one thing and why you're doing it, and then just get it done. Set yourself, if it's a year, just set yourself a goal, prioritize, and like running, carve out the time to do it. Don't always put it on the back burner, make it a priority. For me, it became a priority for that 6 to 12 months. It became, it moved in front of my running and, because it was a priority to get it done. And I think don't listen to all these people. You have to do, an hour a day. You have to do this. There is no have to's. It's like with a marathon, people say, oh, you have to train for 16 weeks. No, you don't. It's whatever you feel you can do. I've known people run marathons who've done no training. I've known people who've done a year's training. And the same with a book. For me, it just became about, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it done, because I would have procrastinated otherwise and would never have put myself out there. So just do it. Nike said, just do it. Get it done.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You never know where. Something I put on my Instagram just recently is just don't wait for all the traffic lights to be on green. They never are. They're never all green lights. Just start. And occasionally you'll hit some barriers, and that's the universe testing you to see if you really want to do it. And that's the same with me with marathons. It's with writing the book, you set yourself a big goal and then something comes along to, knock you off your path. And that's just testing your resolve of, do you really want this goal? Do you really want to write the book? Well, then you've got to get on with it. Do you really want to run this marathon? For Paris, my first one, within weeks of booking the flight, a surgeon said to me, you're going to have your knees are bad. You're going to have a cortisone in your knee, your cortisone injection, either that or you can't run. So I have to have a cortisone injection in my knee because I've decided I'm going to do it. And that was the universe testing me to see if I really wanted to run the streets of Paris. Did I really want to write the book? Lots of things came in to stop me. But again, it's resolve, resilience, and getting it done.
You've crossed a lot of finish lines in your runs and all the places you've been. What's it like to cross the finish line of the book and someone handing you your book for the first time and holding it? That's got to be a medal all on its own.
That was so amazing. And again, the universe tested me on that one. My husband and I decided to travel for 3 months and be grey nomads. So in the process of writing it and actually physically getting a copy, other people got copies of it before I did because I was traveling. And so a great friend of mine, Alana, I had one sent to her. I had one sent to Helen, who was my running buddy, and they read it before I did. And they saw the cover before, and I knew. And I had to drive. We'd probably done a few thousand kilometers, and then we met up with Alana and her husband, and they came to a restaurant, and she had this book. So I have a photo of her passing me my book, and it's the most amazing experience. I'd not seen it before, and so I didn't have the great book unraveling. It was like I wanted to unpack it and do it all here. No, it was all done remotely and hybridly, and but it was very, very exciting. And I published it, literally hit go on Amazon in a caravan park in the middle of South Australia. My husband and I were in the in the van and pressing go and using my laptop and publishing it in the middle. I was literally in the middle of nowhere. It just shows you can get it done.
See, now those are the stories we're not going to hear anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's what I love to hear from our authors is what it feels like. And then as we hold a copy in our hands, we have a better appreciation for the story behind the book as well.
Mm. And I was very excited. And I would say, surround yourself, again, community. I literally hit go on Amazon. It was very late one night. It was pouring with rain. And I remember this. And then eventually sort of sleeping, woke up the next morning and it was a bestseller. And I went, you've got to be kidding me. How did that happen? Because my community, I told them I'm going to publish it. There's a strategy, and you get somebody, Andrea was amazing who helped me self-publish. There's always people to help you. It's build your tribe, bring your community together. And overnight, because I have friends in England and America and Australia, it was a bestseller on Amazon. I was like, whoa, how did that happen?
That's a good feeling. That's a great feeling. And those are the people that cheer you on as you run. Those are the people in the standing along the road cheering you as you go. A lot of people, you'll never know their name, but they're there to cheer you as you run. So we need to do that for each other as we write as well, I think.
Well, there's a saying, isn't there? We all rise better on a rising tide. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Gillian, where do we go to connect with you? Where you talked about Amazon for the book. Where can we get the book? I'm curious. You said Instagram. Like, where do we go to connect with you?
Yeah, the book is on Amazon. I only sell it through Amazon. So it's Running in Circles, Gillian Stapleton, and you'll find that on Amazon. You can get Kindle or a physical copy. And you can connect with me on Instagram, Running in Circles 42. And you remember the 42 because in our side of the world, 42 kilometers is how far a marathon is. Sorry, my light's gone on my Running in Circles 42. And then you can connect with me on Instagram. I also have a website, gillianstapleton.com. So
beautiful. That's
you'll
great,
find
Gillian.
me.
Gillian, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for taking time out of your run to talk to us and for writing a book to help many, many women on their journey, on their path as well. I'm excited to have you on the show. Really appreciate you being part of this.
Well, I really thank you for allowing me to talk differently today and asking great questions. And for anybody out there who's an emerging author, I would just say, just do it. Do whatever it takes, because it's such a sense of joy and pride once you hit that go button. It's exciting.
Excellent. And if you want that runner's high of feeling like you're in the zone and in the moment, you have to run to get there. So there you go. Gillian, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun. Well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote with your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. And I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.